see you all here. We're so happy you're joining us this morning for our last panel of the Night of Artists, Heading Out. Before we get too much further in, I want to thank some of our sponsors for making this weekend happen. It takes a lot to help put on such a wonderful event for everyone. I'd like to thank Art of the West for the wonderful hospitality for both of the panels yesterday and today. Western Art Collector for supporting and sponsoring the Artist Awards lunch. And then the Williams Chadwick Family Charitable Fund of the San Antonio Area Foundation for the Artist Awards. And then our 2023 Western Art title sponsors are the Plessy Foundation, Debbie and John T. Montford, and the Plum Foundation. And then to the rest of our sponsors as well, just a giant thank you for supporting us. I would like to introduce our moderator, Michael Clawson. He is based in Phoenix, Arizona. He serves as executive editor for Western Art Collector, American Art Collector, Native American Art, and American Fine Art magazine. He also hosts the podcast, The American Art Collective. And then prior to joining the magazine world, he was an award-winning journalist and photojournalist in the Phoenix area as well. And again, if that's not enough to keep him busy, he has 3 kids, including twins, which keep him and his wife, Sarah, very busy. And then last but not least, he is just finished writing his first book and is already fast at work on his second book, both of which are related to Western art as well. So he's going to be our moderator today. Please join me in welcoming Michael and the rest of our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out today. This is going to be a really fun panel. Yesterday was called Headin. It was sort of about how a collection sort of goes back out into the world when you're done collecting or maybe downsizing. Today is called Heading Out, and it is about young collectors and new collectors, and just sort of helping them, guide them into this world that we all love, and helping them avoid some pitfalls and just some tips and maybe where the market's headed. I'm really excited. The panel is going to be fantastic today. So we're going to start on the far end today, on the far left. Robert Oliver is an avid art collector and community leader in Cuero, Texas. As chairman of the board of directors of the Chisholm Trail Heritage Museum, Oliver is credited as the lead stakeholder in establishing this thriving museum in 2000. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
And next to him, our next guest. For 25 years, art has been Mary Ross Buchholz's devotion. She and her husband live and ranch in the rural West Texas area near the town of El Dorado. Coming from a pioneering ranching family, she offers a glimpse of her daily ranch life through her paintings, sculpture, and the most primitive of mediums, charcoal and graphite. Buchholz strives to capture the authenticity of their way of life by gathering reference material from the ranch, and as a result, each piece she creates is a testament to her family's ranching tradition. Mary Ross is an award-winning artist who participates in many museum shows across the country. She's represented by Inside Gallery here in Texas in Fredericksburg. Welcome, Mary Ross. And then to my immediate right is Beau Alexander, the owner and gallery director of the notable and contemporary Western Art Gallery, Maxwell Alexander Gallery in Los Angeles. He is a consultant to major public institutions and a celebrity clientele. His passion is building collections for avid art enthusiasts and introducing first-time collectors to quality original art. Welcome, Beau. So I'm going to start where we kind of started yesterday, which is what is the spark that brought you into this world, whether it's art or more specifically Western art. Beau, let's start with you. What was the first thing that kind of introduced you to the world of art?
So I don't know. Everyone may or may not know my brother is Logan Maxwell Ajesh. I have the same last name. I don't use it in business. I'm confused. But I got into this business through him. I've always kind of been on the business side of things. I went to business school. I did all that. And but Logan and I are very close in age and have been close our whole lives and all our different hobbies and all that. So when Logan decided to pursue art full time after high school, I was always kind of shadowing him, doing what I could to make his life a little easier so that he could focus on art. And it's really through him that I was introduced to art of the American West as a profession. Growing up in Los Angeles, we have the Gene Autry Museum, and in middle school, elementary school, we would take field trips there. And so that was probably my first introduction to the American West. My prom was held at the Autry.
And now Logan has worked there.
And now Logan's in the permanent collection there, and I've consulted for the museum. So it's kind of crazy, but yeah.
It's a real probably, yeah.
Yeah, so good question.
Mary Ross, what was your sort of introduction to art?
Well, like almost everybody's here, I've been drawing since I was a child, and even though I didn't get my formal art degree, my mother knew I had that interest, and she as well. And actually, she gave me the shove. She was like, "We're going to take art lessons together." And Bob and I, my husband, had started our young family and living at the ranch, trying to raise kids and make ends meet. What am I going to do? And it just started falling into place after art lessons and many workshops and traveling across the country to various museum shows and our museum exhibitions, and even abroad to see the old masters. And it was a wonderful time to spend with my mom. Her health isn't well. She's not doing as well now, but treasuring those moments together starting out. And just blessed that people had faith in me and commissioned me to do portraits. I mainly did portraits early on of various people in our community, and it just kind of went from there. And before you know it, I was in various art shows, and very blessed to feel very blessed and fortunate to be at the stage of who I am now. So, along with many artists in this room, they may not know it, but they contributed to where my career is going.
Wonderful, thank you. And Robert, tell us what led you here today? What was your path?
It's been a long journey. And I was just thinking about how you're influenced and at what stage were you interested in art. At the University of Texas, when I was there in the 60s, it was tie-dye and batik and all that stuff. But when I finished at the university, I went to Vail, Colorado to work for about 25 years. And learned very quickly that Colorado, Arizona, California is the real West. And here in Texas, it's more the Southwest. But I've been interested in art sort of all my life. What changed about 23 years ago is that we started the Chisholm Trail Heritage Museum in Crow. Crow is about 85, 90 miles southeast of here. And it's a town of about 8,000 people. But it's very, very different now. It's an interesting little town. And so we started this museum, and about 10 years ago, I came into the ability to start buying Western art on sort of a nicer scale, more expensive paintings, with the thought in mind that one day we would expand the museum, which we're doing right now, into we've acquired 2 additional historic buildings, and we're creating 3 new galleries in the Native American, Texana, and Western Southwestern art. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Wonderful, thank you. So one of the things that we want to talk about today is just ways that young and new collectors can sort of interact with this world that we love. I'd love to know, is it with the internet and with the way things are, social media, there's a lot to process. But there's also a lot to sort of enjoy and sort of dig into. Is the sort of the speed of the market and the availability of everything, especially with the internet, is this an easier thing for new collectors, or was it in some aspect in the 80s and 90s there was less material coming at you, there was less sort of overload? I'd love to know if the internet and social media, are these things helping new collectors, or is it sort of a distraction? Beau, you guys do great social media How are things working for young collectors? Is this a good thing?
I mean, I can't compare it to what it was before because I've only known this world through internet, through social media. So maybe Robert can answer this question a little better than I could, but you know, we have access to everything now, and so the more that we can promote art and get it out, even beyond this niche of the West, and broaden our market to the more national level and international level, I think it's only a good thing. Where it gets messy is that, like you said, there's so much information, and how do you process that, and how do you know what's good, especially when you're looking at an image of 1 by 2 inches. When you see those paintings in person, do they hold up as well? Are they better? Are they not? And so that's where ultimately the galleries come into play, because we're here to try to curate these collections and kind of help the general audience understand that these are the artists that we should focus on. So, social media and the internet, it's great to spread the word and get people involved, especially the younger generation, because they're on their phones all the time, including myself. And so once they're in the fold, we hope that they trickle into the galleries and kind of can hone their understanding. Because when you're presented, even a museum show like this, when you walk into the galleries, it's overwhelming, and there's 200-300 paintings, and if you're a first-time buyer, you can walk in, and as expensive as art is, it's an impulse buy for a lot of people, and you're in this environment, it's exciting, let's buy this, let's put the drawing, and you'll find a painting that, maybe in a year you decided, maybe I should have bought that. So when you come to a gallery like our gallery, it's curated in such a specialized way that hopefully you won't make that mistake, and you'll buy a painting that you're going to love forever.
Do people buy art from social media? Have you sold paintings from social media?
Sell a ton of art to social media.
Are these typically with clients you've already worked with before, or brand new clients?
Both, and it's not just young buyers. It's baby boomer generation all the way down. We have one exhibition every November, our Black Friday exhibition, that we created specifically to allow the new buyers into the market. So we ask all the artists in the gallery. We invite a lot of guest artists. We price it's all original art, and the majority of it is priced $2,500 and above. And we exclusively promote that show on social media. Last November we sold 110 paintings in about 20 minutes, and that ranged from first-time buyers who've never bought a piece of art to long-time collectors who only had space for an 8x10 or 9x12. So yeah, it's become so ingrained in our lives that you can't ignore it.
Robert, what sort of resources do you use? Because you're buying art, you're a collector yourself. What sort of resources do you use when you're looking for new art or new galleries? Do you use social media? Do you use events like this?
I have, to me, there's been this explosion. During the spring months and fall months, you could probably fly to, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Scottsdale, and there are these really great shows going on like every weekend. 1 or 2 weekends ago, March early in Scottsdale. And I just don't remember it being that way, like even 10 years ago. And what they're doing in LA is really wonderful, because they have a small works sale. And they're generally, a lot less expensive than a 48 by 48. So it's a great way to sort of ease yourself into that. But yeah, I've gotten things online. And I'm sorry. They look better in person than they do.
Mary, you're coming at it from a different angle. You're the artist. Is social media, or having just sort of an online presence, is that intimidating? Or does it take you away from your work, or do you enjoy that aspect?
Oh, I enjoy that aspect of it. I guess I can compare it to when I first started my art career in the 90s and early 2000s. So in the 90s, the internet was just in its infancy, and or for me it was anyway. for digital, what did we have? We had Art of the West magazine, we had Southwest Art, various magazines. Western Art Clicker wasn't yeah. I had folders, tear out pages, and keep files that way. And so when it moved to the internet stage and digital, and that the whole aspect of it takes in Instagram and Facebook now. Or the newsletters that we are sending out from our websites, or just reaching people that we didn't do by mail and announcements like that. So yeah, it's very convenient.
And you find that you can manage the two, your studio and then everything else?
Yes. It would be nice to have a helper, and I'm actually trying to think of ways that I can maybe pay someone to start helping with that. It really helps. I see other artists that may have maybe a man who has his wife helping and vice versa. They're really good on the computer, and that way you can devote your time, have your easel time, and make sure you don't wind up spending too much time on the computer or phones.
Is communicating with artists, or excuse me, is communicating with collectors, do you find it easier or more rewarding? Because it is instantaneous. You can.
Yes, I mean, I may put out a post or a newsletter and for a show coming up, and immediately I'll get responses. Oh, I want that piece, or how can I go about? Hopefully, it's a lot of people just want to reach out and get it immediately. So if it's a gallery show, sometimes that is available. Otherwise, we have to wait. And for a museum show, we have to participate in that fashion. So it's pretty exciting.
After COVID, or during COVID, a lot of galleries that weren't online now had a larger online presence. I think all the artists sort of brushed up on their social media skills. You started to see things go online quicker. Auctions, people who weren't bidding online via auction, now they're doing those things. Did anything change for any of you after COVID, and how you interact with clients, collectors, other artists? And I'll open this up to the whole panel. Did anything change after COVID that helped you in finding new art or communicating with people?
I can just talk to, just putting a little bit more attention to detail in our website. People couldn't come to the gallery and see the paintings in person, so we started including video elements of each painting that we had in our exhibitions so that people can get a better sense of the texture. So a lot of times when a painting is photographed, the photographers have to put a filter on that photograph to take the glare out from the lights. So detail is removed from a lot of the images that you see online. You don't see a lot of the texture, a lot of the nuances, a lot of the values. And so just little things like that, making it a lot easier for people to even not drive across town in Los Angeles. They can hop on the website and kind of see it all. We've started including pricing a little bit more transparent with that. And that's actually a cue I took from the museum shows. Museum shows put the pricing out publicly. That was something that I didn't do until recently. So just little changes like that make it easier for the consumer and the collector.
One thing that I think I started doing more, and I think a lot of improvement in that area, but you mentioned videoing, so I'll take progression shots or video footage of my artwork as I'm going along. And that really, and when you post it on Instagram and Facebook, seems to reach a lot more people, and they reach out to me and they respond to that, little glimpse into you in your studio. And it just makes it more personable, I guess.
I would love to know, because everyone when they start out, they sort of need an introduction to what they're And I'm sure, Mary, there's things that an artist has to just learn, sometimes through trial and error, just sometimes with experience. Beau, I'd love to know for you from the gallery, and Robert from the collector, and Mary from you as an artist, who taught you? Who gave you an introduction into this world? How did you learn the steps? How did you learn how it all functioned? Or did you have to just figure it out yourself? Beau, we can start with you, but...
I honestly think part of the reason why our gallery has been able to be successful and get so much attention is because I came in as an outsider, and I came at it from a different perspective. I didn't do things the same way that it's been done for the last 30 years, 40 years in this genre. A lot of what I was looking at was I was looking at the galleries in New York and the contemporary galleries and how they conducted business in a way that really made the art feel important. They present the art in a very clean and straightforward fashion. If you go into one of the galleries, it might be this huge space and there's 5 paintings hanging. And all of a sudden those 5 paintings feel so important. You're not even sure why. And so that's what we do at the gallery. We have a 3,500 square foot space that's really long and skinny with 16-foot high ceilings. And we might only have about 15 to 20 paintings on display at any time. So when you walk into the gallery, it feels like a very, special thing that you're walking into. You get to experience art in a different way. So I did a lot of my own, just what interested me, what did I like when I looked at art. Because when I visited the more traditional Western art galleries, it didn't appeal to me at all. I didn't like the presentation of the art. I didn't like that there was carpet on the wall. I didn't like that there were these dark woods. It presented it in a way that just was not appealing to me. And so I thought, if it's not appealing to me, it's not going to be appealing to anyone else that's of my generation. And probably, if I presented it in a different way, a lot of experienced collectors might look at it in a different way. Being in Los Angeles, we're on a big stage and we're able to present art of the American West to a city that maybe wasn't really thinking about it. And so we present the art in a way that, look, you can put it in a contemporary home, or you can put it in your home and my home also, but it fits in a modern setting. And so we're just trying to change the thinking of art. And it is, no one taught us that. It's just, it was our own preference of what we like. And that's not right or wrong. It's just what we, the way that we see it.
Mary, did someone kind of advise you or help you? And I ask these questions because any of the new collectors out there, they're looking for sort of guidance. Who guided you?
I had younger, my boys when they were younger, they helped out, but a lot of it was trial and error, and I'm not afraid to ask how to do something. Just the other day I was asking how to embarrassed how to do a particular function on Instagram, and so my youngest son's girlfriend helped me out. I was like, oh, I wish I had known that a year ago. So yes, I definitely reach out to the younger generation. And the technology is amazing, and it just keeps growing and changing, and I'm hoping to keep up with the times. I don't want to be left in the dust.
Robert, was there a collecting 101 course that you took way back when?
No, not really. I'm so glad that COVID is behind us. So that you can get on a plane, fly to Santa Fe, or fly to Scottsdale, or LA, and see these extraordinary works of art in person. I'm just more and more blown away by what is out there in the market, with the artists and what they're painting and so forth. But no, I mean, you just sort of have a feeling of what you like and what you don't like. And that might change in a year or 2 or 3, or your financial situation might change, and so you can go after a larger painting and so forth. It is more or less self-taught, I think.
Going back to sort of my first question, what brought you into this sort of world? There was a question that was asked at yesterday's panel, and I thought this would be a really great question to bring over to today's today's panel. And someone asked, basically, like, you know, there was a certain generation that was raised on Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and Rawhide and Bonanza and all these things that don't really exist anymore. They're making fewer westerns on TV and certainly in movies, but that was what brought a lot of collectors into Western art, where the TV shows and film. We don't have those now. How are young collectors and new collectors finding their way here? What have you noticed? Robert, do you have any sort of opinion on it?
I don't, but I do sort of favor illustration. Someone that's had an illustration as background to their art. Billy Shink is one of them. Really great, sort of capturing. Well, there's lots of things that have, the old cowboy movies and so forth. That's my personal feeling.
Mary, what about you? Have you noticed, what are your collectors telling you? How are they discovering Western art?
Well, we mentioned COVID earlier, and I think during those times, people were wanting to get out into nature. So they were visiting parks, they were visiting the outdoors in some form or fashion whenever we were able to travel and get away. And so I feel like that was many people, especially in the urban area, their connection to the West. And you would see various posts of whether it was family or just in general, people taking hikes and that sort. And then they mentioned yesterday the show Yellowstone. And so that's nice for people, again, even though it's a...
Give us your review. Any chance we have to talk about Western art, though, is a good thing, right? Even though it might be a little wonky, right?
Yeah. That's not real life, people.
But I'm really curious about your answer to this question because, I think that you're talking to a lot of new collectors. How are they discovering this work?
I mean, there's so many avenues. But that was the main focus of our gallery, was to try to generate new young collectors to be interested in this type of art. We're coming at it from every possible angle. And so one of my goals that I've been trying to do to open this market up beyond just this world that we're in is to do collaborations. And again, this is from me looking at what other businesses were doing, what contemporary galleries or just interesting companies that I like were doing. There was a lot of collaborations going on. So we're trying to connect with other businesses that are not necessarily art related, but they're Western related. So, for example, we did a custom blanket with Pendleton, where they took one of Logan Maxwell Bishop's paintings and they converted it into a blanket, and that went out to all of their. So Pendleton doesn't advertise traditionally. They have their catalog, I guess, that they send out every season, and so you have thousands and thousands of people that don't probably buy Western art, but they buy blankets, they buy T-shirts, and so we're using that avenue to try to open it up. And I got calls from people that don't even know what a painting is. That say, "Hey, I saw your brother's painting in the catalog," and these are people that would never even know Western art existed. We just did I was talking with Robert about this earlier. We did a collaboration with Stetson. They commissioned Thomas Blackshear and again Logan to do their version of the Last Drop for Stetson, which is a avant-garde painting from 100 years ago that Stetson's used as advertising. Again, that went out to their whole audience of people. So all that stuff is just an accumulation of things Western, but things that are interesting from the West. There's a lot of kind of weird stuff in the West, and there's a lot of really great stuff in the West, and we try to curate all the best in one place. and then all the other stuff, like social media. The museum shows do a good job of generating local interest from, and I know Michael has been working on this a lot to try to get younger people involved. And so, it's everyone. It's all the artists promoting. It's all the collectors talking to their friends, and all that stuff just kind of funnels in, and we do our best to help everyone else.
I'd be curious to know, and Bill, I'm going to ask you this first. Have the themes changed? With some of your artists have never painted Western art. I mean, they've been only in Western art for a couple of years, a handful of years, and so they're creating images that we've not really seen before. Have you noticed that the themes are changing among younger artists, or maybe the younger collectors or newer collectors are wanting different ideas expressed in their work?
I think the West. There's only so many things that are considered Western, quote unquote. So, I'm not sure that there's any. You're not going to paint like a half horse, half human, and with a cowboy on it or something. Like it just. I think to your point of some artists that are coming over and starting to paint the West, I think it's mainly because there's such an exciting movement happening right now. I feel like when I look back at the Western art history is relatively short. I mean, we can go back to Catlin in like the late 1800s or something, or a little before that. And then very quickly we get to the 1980s, where it's like, we have the stars, a couple of them, Bruno Howard Post, Billy Shank, you have Fritz Scholder, whose name is now becoming huge. And that was a really exciting time. And then, it kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't in this during the 90s, but when I look back, it kind of took a different turn and maybe went, in one direction. And now it's coming back to maybe a little bit more contemporary, more slightly edgy, if you want to call it that. And so there's been a resurgence of younger people, of even older generation collectors that are, buying from us and wanting to be part of this new program that we put together. What we consider the most interesting paintings. And so other artists are seeing that from other genres, and they want to, they're inspired by the American West. And I'm all for it. If you're a quality artist and you want to paint the West and you have an interesting thing to say, whether it's more traditional or more contemporary, as long as it's quality, I think it's all good. And so I'm here for it.
Robert, I'd love to know what your thoughts are as a collector. Are you looking for new kinds of stories? Now, before you answer that, I'm thinking, in one small way, in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, you'd see a lot of mountain men and trapper scenes. John Clymer, even Howard Turping, and Paul Cowley. Some of these guys were doing mountain men. That's all they did. And it's just like at one point, we just all decided we're not going to do mountain men anymore. And now mountain men are kind of rare. You don't really see a lot of paintings with mountain men. And it seems like maybe the taste had changed or something had changed. I'd love to know, are you seeing that at any level, Western art?
I love what's going on right now because a lot of it is kind of redundant. The cowboy on the horseback and the horses off screen to the right and right in the middle of the painting and so forth. But there's some really wonderful new, I don't know if you want to call it brave, but it's just, it's great. I love it. That's sort of my take. More sort of contemporary, edgy feel to Western art.
I'm going to switch subjects just a little because it was something big that came up yesterday, and I think it'd be fun to continue here. Auctions. How do auctions fit into all this? And do you like them? Do you support them? Are you a client of the auction houses? Robert, I know you've purchased some work from auction. I don't know if that's where you get most of your work, but what's your relationship like with auctions? And do you see them as a good thing, or is there too much, or what are your thoughts?
Well, these galleries can be pretty, I won't say shrewd, but I never really can buy too much in an auction of a real important artist that's successful today because, they have phone bids coming in and all the the internet and so forth as the auction's going on. It's very difficult. I prefer to take maybe a lower profile to go into a gallery and find a piece that I like.
Mary, when Don Wolsey was on yesterday, he talked a lot about this. For an artist, auctions can be terrifying. How do you feel about auctions?
Oh, I enjoyed the auction last night. It was a relief to get it over with as well. So yes, our insides are in knots. I don't know of anyone who would say differently, but you know, it can be risky, and you just have to decide whether you're willing to risk it or not. I think Michael and Lynn's your team at the Briscoe done a fabulous job over the years, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
You know, I think as a buyer, you have to be very disciplined, and I'm very competitive, so it's really easy for me to just know I'm going to get that painting. But you need to sort of step back. I bought a painting last night, and I think it's a great, fair price, beautiful work. But you have to be disciplined and say, okay, this is how far I'm going to go. Get into the frenzy of it all.
Beau, you're going to come at this from a very different angle. What are your thoughts on auctions, and do they play a role in the market that we're talking about?
You know, they're great, and they're also horrible. You know, auctions used to be for dealers. Dealers would go and buy inventory, and they would take it back to the gallery, and they would sell it to retail. Now, auctions are retail situations, and people put so much emphasis on this one painting that went for sale at this one moment, and all of a sudden that's what the value of that piece of art is. I think it's irrelevant. And I was talking about this last night. There's so many options that, you know, I look at historic things that I want to try to buy to resell and bring with my own collection, and I just forget, or it's on the East Coast and I slept in and I forgot to jump online, or I get phone calls and I don't answer it, and I listen to the voicemail an hour later, and it's the auction house saying, like, your painting's coming up to bid. And so how many other people does that happen to that forget to bid on that one thing where that painting might have sold for 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more? Maybe it went below estimate, and all of a sudden we have record of what it sold for, and now you have collectors that start speculating on what something's worth, and then they're coming to me and saying, like, well, you have it priced at $50,000, but this one time 4 years ago with this podunk auction house, and it sold for $5,000 less, so I don't want to pay that. And so it makes my life a little difficult, and I think it makes the artist's life really difficult. And it's further perpetuated by the dealers that are buying these paintings at the museum shows, or acquiring them on the secondary market and speculating on the artists' careers by flipping them into an auction. They don't understand what they're doing by taking a living artist painting and putting it into a public auction. You're gambling on the career of that artist. Because if that painting does bad, all of a sudden everyone has record of that particular sale on that particular day, one thing, and they're going to look at that artist and say, well, I don't think it's worth that because it sold at auction for less. Well, does something happen at one day at one time determine what an artist's career is? And it might not be the best example of that artist. And so, I think in that regard it can be a detriment. And there's so many auctions now that there's so much art. And I don't know if we're going to talk about the museum shows, but there are some correlations between that as well. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out to the market, and there's a lot of emphasis put on certain things that I don't believe are relevant. I go back to the auctions. I always circle back to the auctions that they're a wholesale event. That with internet and marketing and galleries now that now own auction houses, promoting it to their primary clientele, that it's become a retail business, but it's really not. And the emphasis and value of a painting is not determined by an auction.
I'd love to know your pitch to a new client that comes in who says, what are the benefits? Maybe I want to buy artwork from an auction, but sell me on this. Why should I use a gallery? What do you tell people when they ask? What are the benefits of a gallery?
I mean, if you come to me and you show me a painting, like I could walk you through the show upstairs and you come and you take me to an artist and say, is this a good painting? I can tell you whether that's a good painting from that artist or not. If you go to an auction and there's a painting available, chances are it's not the best example of that artist's painting. Usually, when a painting, not usually, but a lot of times people sell paintings they don't like. They come back to market, the 3 Ds, right? It's death, divorce. That's a big reason why a lot of art goes back to market. But quite frankly, a lot of art comes back because people, again, it's impulse buys. They're kind of surrounded by so much art that it's very easy to make a bad decision. So when you come to me and you ask for my expertise of what you should buy, I'm going to build a collection that you're going to love for years. I'm not going to try to sell you on every single thing you have in the gallery. I'm going to put together a plan. These are the artists that I believe are the best artists, and I'm going to get you the best examples of their art. Now, if you buy from an auction, there's an auction coming up, pretty bad, and they're going to sell all those paintings. And there's probably 300 lots, 400 lots. There's maybe 10 paintings that are worth buying. So that means 290 paintings are going to collections that, in my opinion, are pretty bad. So come to me and I will steer you in that direction. I've done the work and I've put in the hours and the research to know that this is the good stuff, this is the great stuff. And this is the stuff that, if you like it, cool. If you love a painting, buy it. It's at the end of the day, we can get into the nitty gritty of fine art, technique, and what makes a painting better than another painting. But at the end of the day, you're living with it. It's in your house. If you love it, you should buy it. So putting that aside, come to me, an art snob that's going to, be very discerning and very critical. That's where the value of the gallery comes in. We're out there every day looking at art. We're developing the careers of new artists. We're trying to find the next great artists, but also maintain the careers of the artists that we work with for so long. And so we provide that value. We're that critical eye, and we're there to tell you yes or no. And if it's a good gallery, we'll be honest. We're not going to try to shove a painting down your throat. So, and I buy paintings at auction for clients sometimes. So, the auctions are not all bad. Sometimes some great paintings come up, and it's a painting that we've been looking for, and all of a sudden it's back on the market. And I'll recommend it to an artist. I'll bid on their behalf, and so it's there's a lot of art. There's a lot of art in this show. There's a lot of art in general. There's a lot of art in magazines. There's a lot of art in social media. How do you funnel that? If you're a newer collector, how do you know what you should be looking at? So I'm here to tell you.
I'd love to know, I know you can only speak for Maxwell Alexander Gallery, but if someone buys something from you and years down the road they don't want it anymore, they can certainly take it to an auction. Would you buy back a piece that you sold someone? Just because that could help the artist, right? Not putting it on the open market like that.
Absolutely. So in art etiquette, if you buy a painting, you should go back to the gallery that you bought it from. And if you want to resell that painting or it's no longer fitting in your home, it would be appreciated by everyone involved whose livelihood is based on this artwork. That it go back to the gallery that you bought it from and allow them at least first right of refusal to either resell the painting for you or buy it outright. And if you're buying from a gallery that's reputable and that truly stands behind their artists, chances are they'll buy it back from you. If they're not a reputable gallery and they kind of sold you a piece of junk, they're probably going to say, hey, you should put it in our auction, or you should put it in an auction, whatever. And so, those are little things when you're sussing out a gallery and trying to figure out who you trust and who you work with. Those are little indicators. Before you buy a painting, maybe ask the gallery in 20 years, in 10 years, If I leave it to my kids, this or that, what are my options? And if they say, well, I just throw it in an auction, I would think twice about buying that painting because chances are they don't believe that they can resell it.
Thank you for that. I feel like next year we should have Beau and an auction person. Really a fascinating conversation because your perspective from a gallery is really important, and I know I've talked to auction people and their perspective from auctions. They make a compelling argument too, and it just would be interesting to hear that conversation. You did mention though museum exhibitions, which I do want to touch on next. And Robert, I'm going to start with you. Do museum exhibitions like this, and I've seen you at others as well, this is helpful for the community, right? Because it builds the community. Have you noticed that this is a good place to be, to view art, to meet collectors, to, there's 3 magazines here, there's dealers here, there's all kinds of people. Is this a good place to view art?
And to meet the artists,
Right.
And to have more than just a short conversation with them. I think it provides a great opportunity to meet the artists and meet other like-minded people, and just more and more and more you begin to, it's like any sort of interest, you begin to recognize people, they recognize you, more meaningful conversation and so forth. So I think the Briscoe has done a great job over the years.
Mary, what's your perspective on shows like this? Is this fun for you?
This is fun for me.
Yeah.
Many artists were solitary. Tend to not want to get out unless I have to go to a show, and it's a breath of fresh air. Especially if you travel other places, it's a mini vacation in a way. So, yeah, I enjoy meeting the collectors, our potential collectors, and meeting people from all walks of life across the way. So it's something that we have to, it's a necessity, we have to build on our career, but in that, in various ways. But I think meeting people and getting together with our other artist friends is nurturing.
I've heard people say that it's important to have shows at museums because the work is of a quality that belongs in a museum.
Yes.
And to have it in a place like the Briscoe is important to establish, like, this is important art. It's held at a museum. I don't know. Is it important to you? I don't know if you're in a permanent collection anywhere. Is that something that you appreciate, being in a museum
Yes.
with those great artists on the wall, all those other great artists?
Exactly. So we all strive to do our best work for museum shows, and then if we're lucky enough to be, have a piece in a permanent collection, it's a good feeling. And sorry, I feel like I'm stumbling a little bit here.
I want to ask, because I think one of the things that Beau and I might talk about here in a minute is, are there too many of these? You have deadlines. I always feel for the artists because you talk to them, and I thought I had deadlines. And then you talk to some of these guys, Howard and Billy, and you guys you're doing lots of shows, and Mary, I know you do a lot of shows as well. Is it a lot of your year, or are you just prepping shows all the time? And I imagine if they're museum shows and you're wanting to do your best work.
Meeting those deadlines is a challenge, and so we have to sometimes just say, well, I can't take on that next show or that next museum show or exhibition, whatever it may be. So I kind of count out each year and write down how many pieces I have to place in whichever museum show or gallery show. And I can overextend myself if I'm not careful. So I want to make sure I present or put forth my best work. And we overbook something, it can, I think the work can suffer. And I'm conscious of which shows I'm doing.
Beau, from your perspective, you've consulted with some of these big shows. What are you telling them about the market and about how these things function within the market, these shows like this?
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this topic. I'll try to be as respectful as possible and as quick as possible, but there are a lot of great things about museum shows, and you've mentioned some of them, and there's this type of exhibition does not exist in any other genre of art that I'm aware of, and as a result, it creates a really great community of people, and we see a lot of the same people at a lot of the different shows, and I think people enjoy them, and they can be really exciting, and simultaneously, similar to auctions, I think that they can be somewhat detrimental to the market. There's, in my opinion, there are too many shows, and as a result, there's too. So when you put together one of these museum exhibitions, there are 80 to 100 artists that are included in these shows, and quite frankly, I hate to say this, I'm going to say it, whatever. There's not 100 museum level quality artists at any one given time, and so when a museum puts together one of these exhibitions, they have to fill wall space, they have to generate a certain amount of income to make the show worth it, and as a result, they have to fill the walls with as much art as they can get, and chances are that. Similar to what I talked about earlier, that you're going to make a mistake, in my opinion, that maybe you're not going to love in a year or two. Now, that's not to say there's not great art in these shows. There are. But if you're not a seasoned collector, you know which is what. I can get into this further if you want. I'll touch on it from my perspective, from a gallery owner. When I look at, there's Prix de West, there's Masters, there's Night of Artists here at Briscoe, there's the Buffalo Bills show in Cody, there's Idle Jorg in Indianapolis, there's the Wildlife show in Wyoming. And these are all great shows. Museums are putting their weight behind art, which is awesome. But at the same time, in my opinion, when you're selling $2 million worth of art, you're not really a museum anymore, you're an art gallery. And so the lines start blurring together when a nonprofit organization that's supposed to be a non-biased entity that's supporting art is now a competitor as an art gallery selling millions of dollars of art a year. And it's an unfair advantage because they put on one museum exhibition a year, they have a full staff working on that exhibition, and they make this great event, have this great venue, and it's a lot of fun, right? And so there's all those benefits to it, but I can't compete to that. I can't put one exhibition a year. I have to have an exhibition every month. And when I look at these 6 or 7 museum shows and I look at the artists that I represent, there's easily around $2 to $3 million of art of the artists that I represent that are spread out to these museum shows. And so when I look at the museum shows and I look who's running them and what goes in behind them, it's almost never anyone that's in the art business. It's museum people that care about art, but it's not art business people. And so they're not developing new artists. They're not necessarily they're not able to have a discerning eye because there has to be enough art for the show to go on. And so it's not curated as well as it should be. And honestly, it can't be curated as well as it should be because there's not enough quality art to do it that way. And so for me, as the youngest person doing this by far, I look at myself and the preservation of this business. And a lot of people are looking at where are the new buyers. The older buyers, the baby boomers are kind of moving out. Where's the next generation coming in? And I can tell you they're there. I'm seeing them. But what I'm not seeing, there's no other galleries. It's just me. There's Buddy, but he's kind of transitioning to a different part of the business from Coeur d'Alene Galleries. But for the most part, it's me. And so if $2 million worth of sales is taken out of my pocket every year, and I'm fighting to get paintings from the artist to be able to run a gallery properly, what's my incentive to continue working as hard as I do every day, trying to develop all these new artists. When I do develop them, they just get cherry-picked by the museums, and the museums put all this pressure on the artists to give them their best paintings. And so for me, it's a total like cluster of what's right, and what's who, you know. And so when I look at it, it's confusing because I want to be here and I want to be part of it and I want to support. And I love the museums. I love Michael. I love the Elliots that put so much effort into this museum and all the other museums. But coming at it from a business perspective and from a longevity of the Western art market, if you remove me from this situation, and I don't mean to sound boastful, but I'm looking around, there's no one else near my age that's running an art gallery. And the barrier to entry to run an art gallery is so high. Because even in the position that we're in, we can't get the art all the time that we want because we're fighting with the museum exhibitions that are putting a lot of pressure on the artists to give them their biggest paintings and their best paintings. And now the museums get a lot more funding than we do. They get donations, they get all these other elements, and as a result, they're able to pay the artists a higher commission than I can pay. And so if I paid the artists what the museums pay, I would be out of business. Without a doubt, it wouldn't even be close. And so there's all these, and what it should be this symbiotic relationship where there's the artists who are obviously the most important, right? It starts there. There's none of this without the art, right? So the artists are first, but what's next? If you look at the art business and the art world, what's the next most important thing besides the art? It's not a museum. Museums are very important, but they're not the next most important thing. The next most important thing are the galleries. Because the galleries are developing a new artist. We're working on it 7 days a week. We're out there talking to people, we're visiting the artists, we're developing artists, we're investing in artists, we're buying paintings when they can't pay rent, we're giving them money when they need to do these things, we're buying frames, we're connecting, we're hosting dinners, we're throwing our event that Robert came out to that, spent 6 figures to put these shows on. And we're in the trenches, we're fighting. We're trying to make the genre continue. And you have these behemoth museums with big board members with a lot of money that are putting on these really great shows. And it can be frustrating because a lot of times a lot of my clients will ask me for my opinion of these shows. I'm selling someone else's, I'm selling my competitors' paintings for them. Because there are great paintings in these shows. The artists do show up for these shows and put really great paintings in them. My opinion, they should put those great paintings in the gallery because we need it. We need it more than the museum need it. If you were doing this show from the Briscoe, or from Autry, or from the Cowboy Hall, the museums are going to continue. Now, they might need to tighten their belt a little bit. They might not be able to have 30 employees, but guess what? I don't have 30 employees. I have one part-time employee. If I was making an additional $2 million a year, okay, I could probably hire a couple more people, and it would probably make it a lot more. It's not all about money, but I'm talking about it from a purely business perspective. It makes a lot more sense to me to put all my effort into this when there's some type of reward that comes back. And so, it's complicated, and it's. I wish there was a better way that the ecosystem could work a little clearly in this Western market. Because if you look at the other markets, sorry, I'll wrap this up. But if you look at the other markets, look at the contemporary market, look at any other market or genre of art, these shows don't exist. If the museums buy art from the galleries when they want to build their living contemporary art collection, they include the galleries in the sales, and they'll buy it from these, the exhibitions that the galleries put on. That doesn't happen in this world. For the most part, the Western art museums build their contemporary art collection through their own show. So they'll buy one painting a year. Every once in a while they'll buy more than one. But again, they're buying it from their own show, so one, they're getting it at a discount because their commission's taken off. and two, they're only buying one painting. You can't build a collection like that. You know, a museum should support an artist from start to finish, and when at the end of that artist's career, they have maybe 6 or 7 examples. It shows and they should be supporting living artists. The dead artists don't need your support. You know, they're great paintings and all that, but the museum should be supporting living artists. And through these exhibitions, they do, but they cut out a very important element of the ecosystem, which is the galleries. So that's my take on it.
We'll do questions in about 10 minutes. I appreciate your perspective on that. I think that there might be some people in the audience who might differ on that, and that's okay. I think that we have to figure out where all of this fits together. Each of us, each collector, each gallery owner, each museum director, everyone has to figure out what's important to them and where it all fits together. I think it's fair to say, though, that the museums are sort of the cultural centers, right? I don't know, Robert, if you feel that way. It does feel like a museum is different than a gallery. In respect to what Beau's saying, Mary and Robert, do you see sort of museums as sort of the cultural sort of backbone of the art world? Is that where art goes? Is that where art should end up? Or is it more, do you see art as should go to private collections and supporting the galleries? I'd love to know your take on
Well,
something.
certainly museums play a supplemental part of exposure. And maybe supporting the work of really good artists. So museum collections are not all bad. But there's a role to play. I can see where it gets dicey between the gallery world and the museum world.
Mary, have you, I'm assuming you've shown more than one gallery. I know you said Insight, but you showed other galleries as well?
I can only get so many pieces out a year, so I have actually said, can I be a guest artist maybe in a particular holiday show or spring show, and that suits me well. And some people are more prolific than others, and so I want to make sure I get the best possible work out there for those galleries and museum shows, and so yeah, it's a juggling act, but I appreciate what Beau has to say. I have a good relationship with my gallery. I feel like it's family in a way. They're genuinely concerned. Say you have an accident in the family, and they're calling to check up on you, and say I have collectors at a museum show, and they're down for the weekend. I would try to take them over to the gallery and see things there. And so I want to pull them both into the scene because they're very important, like Beau says, and Mr. Oliver. So yeah, we need to all work collectively.
I'd love to know if any of you are seeing trends right now in the market, whether it's the way we buy art or just new social media platforms or just new ways that people are communicating. Are you seeing any sort of new developments in the market? Anyone? Yeah.
I feel like, well, for instance, my work, yes, I may have a traditional feel, but at the same time I have a contemporary feel. So I can go into both markets because people on the maybe in the agriculture world can relate to my work, but then there's people that may not have anything to do with agriculture, but they still relate to maybe the close-up, more contemporary pieces. So I feel like my artwork kind of morphs into both worlds. And did I bounce around your question, or did I answer your question?
I think that's good. Yeah. Robert, are you noticing anything? Or is there anything coming up, or anything that you're experiencing that feels different?
Well, several things post-COVID, but a lot of those things were in place before COVID, so they're just sort of coming back into the
was exciting to watch, and going back to the auction houses, we don't have to get into it, but auction houses were prepped and ready to go for online bidding, and then COVID just like supercharged it. And I noticed that with artists as well. They might have had a presence online and then they just supercharged everything, because that was how people had to communicate. But now that we're back to live shows, which thank heavens we're all here today, I don't think anyone's dialing back. Have you noticed that, where everyone is still, the level of online sort of, their online sort of power during COVID, it's still there. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I read something about automation, that everyone thought automation was going to get rid of jobs and make our lives easier, but it's only made us have to run more things and keep more engines running. So yeah, it's like once you start, are we going to stop? No, we're only moving forward. We're only doing more things with video, and it's put a lot more effort into our online presence, even though it was already a strong thing for us.
Excellent. I think maybe we should take some questions.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear what everyone thinks. The questions yesterday were really good.
I'm sorry I kicked out this talk.
Go ahead.
We'll help you get out of the building safe.
Yeah. Now we're in Texas. I don't have a job.
So again, thank you for our panelists. We have a microphone, so if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and we'll get to it. Oh, everyone's getting a shot. There we go.
Great. This might be a bit simplistic, but you mentioned edgy art. Can you describe what that is?
Yeah, it's probably not an accurate description, to be honest. I think it's just maybe a little less traditional.
Less traditional.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant by it. Edgy probably is not the right term to use. It's if you look at, or at least when I look at art over the last 20 years in the contemporary market, again with exceptions, like I see Kim Wiggins back there, and Howard, and Dean, and Billy. These are artists that have been doing things differently for a long time. But generally, a large part of the market is the color palettes were a little darker. They were a little more just kind of straightforward, realistic paintings of what people interpreted as the American West. And I think today, jumping on to, again, what Billy Howard and Kim Wiggins have been doing for 30 plus years is, just a little bit more of a contemporary feel. And I guess that's what I mean by edgy.
I think stylized is a better word than edgy.
Yeah.
It's not a realistic depiction, it's a stylized depiction.
Yeah.
Impressionist.
Yeah, and stylized is a great word because it's, and for me, when I look at an artist and I look for an artist of note, I want their vision of what the world looks like. I don't necessarily want a vision of what I can see the world as. And so, yeah, when you find an artist that, and in this genre, it's still representational, but there's a stylized element to it that really defines a lot of the artists that are working.
But I think Billy Shank could answer the edgy question. That's what he does do, edgy stuff. That's true. Totally right.
So I wanted to thank you for your take on galleries and museums, because I had no idea of that circle. My question is, I started collecting because I got to know artists and enjoyed their work, bought directly, and then the Briscoe opened my eyes to a whole new world. And what I love about the Briscoe is the family atmosphere and how they take care of their members. When I've gone into galleries, I don't get that feeling a lot of times, especially like in Houston. They kind of assess you when you walk in and they treat you accordingly. How do galleries become more receptive to collectors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about it a lot, and I try to visit, again, a lot of contemporary galleries that definitely have that attitude when you walk in. They might not even say hi to you when you walk through the door or something like that. And so, yeah, galleries can be intimidating, and there's a lot of in a way, we have to make the art feel important, and that's not the right thing to say. We have to present the art in a certain way so that it does feel a certain way. And so a lot of times galleries can be difficult to crack for that element because they don't want it to be that easy for you to buy something. Because if it's that easy, then just, you'll think about it and you might roll on it a little bit. And again, art is an impulse buy. And so that's why a lot of galleries do it. We don't do that. Now, if there's certain artists that people speculate on, and they're buying them for investment, and they're buying them to flip them at auction and things like that. So certain artists, if you came to me directly and asked for a handful of artists that we represent, as a gallery person, it's my obligation to vet you to make sure that you're not buying for that reason and that you're buying for the right reason. That is a criticism I have about these museum shows, is that it does level the playing field for these draw boxes, but not everyone is playing, by those rules, and they might stuff boxes and do what they can. And so it opens up artists to exposure to people that are maybe not buying for the right reasons. And so several artists that I represent get targeted at these shows by dealers that are trying to buy them and then they flip them at auction. And so, I can't speak for other galleries. I would say for me, I try to be open and I try to have a strong online presence so people feel comfortable talking to me, and I try to treat our customers very well, whether you're buying a $1,000 painting or a $100,000 painting. But if you do get some pushback, it could be because the gallery owner or the gallery person is trying to do their job to protect the artist, to make sure that the right person is buying their art. That makes sense. I think it's...
You're going to keep me out of the gallery.
No, I know. It's totally different from a museum, because Michael's perspective and the Briscoe's perspective and every museum's perspective is they're generating money. That's the pure reason that these shows happen. They want to generate new collectors that are... Well, let me finish. They want to generate income for the museum, but they also want to bring new people in that will potentially support the museum in other ways, sponsorships, and potentially donate their collection to the museum. So they're much more open.
And support artists.
What's that?
And support artists.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, as a museum should. And so it's a different business model. And so, but I'm not saying that if you walked into my gallery, I wouldn't ignore you. I would treat you very well. And I would try to learn about you and see what you're interested in. So don't judge all galleries from that way. If you do run into a gallery that treats you that way, don't go back. But don't let it taint you from all things. When you walk into a museum, it's a different beast. And I'm not sure how hard it's going to be to explain the difference, but it is different. But if you enjoy art because the Briscoe's treating you that way and you want to support the organization through these shows, you should. If that's the way that you're able to build your collection and it's meaningful to you and art that you love, I wouldn't tell you not to do it. I think it's great. Anyone that buys art, supports art, is great. And wherever you buy it.
I might touch on something with the galleries, and many galleries have art walks, or they'll have an artist come in and do demos. So if you have a particular artist that you're following or interested in collecting, keep up with where they're going. If they're having a demo, go visit them in those particular places, and that helps. That helps the gallery. It helps the artists, and museums host every now and then talks or demos with the various artists. So we artists want to get to know our collectors, and we're normally willing to to get out there and visit with you and find out who you are, and you can find out a little bit about them as well.
I find that art museums play a more than important part. And I mean, if you're interested to go out and educate yourself, I was working in London when I was about 22 years old, and the National Gallery exhibits about maybe 9 or 10 centuries of art and takes you through those early stages in Italy. And then there's the Flemish school, the Dutch school, all sorts of things. So it's there, and you can take it. It could be if you want to, you can educate yourself to the progression of various schools and so forth. And certainly the Briscoe is, I've been here often, and it's taught me a lot. And I've learned about artists through art museums.
I think we have a question right here, and I know that there are some friends in the back, so maybe we can get them a mic for the next.
I just want to say while we're passing, we have the microphone. I was going to jump on that last question. No, I think it's fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
Within the Western art, there's the genre of the wildlife portion. I was wondering if you could compare or contrast that portion of Western art with the, for instance, Ducks Unlimited, Safari Club International groups that are focused strictly on the wildlife art.
That's interesting. I don't know if anyone here is super knowledgeable about that, or do you have any of you have experience with that?
How does it fall into the Western genre? Is that what you're?
Well, how the two markets compare? Is there competition there, or is there?
I think it's. I'm not sure there's competition. I think it's all symbiotic. I think a lot of things get placed under the umbrella of the West. I think wildlife art can be regional, but it's also just taste. I think a lot of wildlife art is sold in Wyoming, places like that. But I don't know if Luke is here, but Luke Frazier sells all over the country. He's in Texas. Yeah, I think it's all good.
I know someone like John Banovich. John Banovich does some of those sort of conservation things at Survivor International and different stuff like that. And it just appears like it's almost a separate market. It's just, we have wildlife here, who's sort of in the art world, but then there's also that, which is also sort of hunting, travel, conservation. I'm not an expert on this, but that's just, I know that there's some artists, and I think Beau's right. I think if Luke Frazier over here, he'll be here tonight. Ask him and see what he says about that, because I'm curious about how that.
Michael, I can tell you specifically how this
Oh, please.
about. The Safari Club and those groups are more about sporting art that includes wildlife, but it's really about hunting and fishing and a particular type of wildlife art. Not that it's exclusive in what they represent. In the museum world, and specifically in this museum world, in the Western museum world, one of the inspirations for Western art is Charles Marion Russell, who was, considered, along with Remington, probably one of the two, and in my opinion, the top Western artist. He created the genre in many ways that we all take part in today. And Russell did over 4,000 paintings in his career, and his main topics in a shorthand were cowboys, Indians, and wildlife. And so he created wildlife art as a subgenre within Western art through his body of work, and that tradition has continued until today.
Thank you, Michael. We might have a couple more there in the back. Tim?
Beau, I thank you for all your comments. I have the highest regard for you. I'm very impressed by you for a long time, so kudos to you. In regard to museum shows, a little bit of personal history. When I first started paying attention to art, we were invited by friends to go to the National Museum of Wildlife Art, their miniature show in the mid-90s. And that was a very well-curated show. Sue Simpson, I think, was the primary curator of that show. It was really, well done. And so we, as complete novice collectors, we weren't even collectors, we were complete novices. We walked in and we were able to see carefully curated assortment of art that we could choose and by the draw box. It was the luck of the draw. And so we started buying there. And that really, subsequent to that, well, that really introduced us to a wonderful variety of artists. And subsequent to that, started going to Breed West and other museum shows. That the point here is that the museum shows introduce a very wide audience to art. And then we started buying from galleries. And so it led down that path. And so it is a symbiotic relationship that can be very well done. There's certainly competition, push and pull, and they serve a great purpose. And these shows, many of them have been around forever. I mean, in our life, our collecting lifetime is 30, 35 years, and it's really a wonderful thing. It's a service that is a public service rendered to people that otherwise would never walk in a gallery. And they see the publicity, they see the party atmosphere. It's very well done. But there is, I understand from the gallery's point of view, the struggle, because the best work typically goes to those shows, and that's a heartache for a good gallery like your gallery. So we see both sides.
Absolutely, and I agree 100% with everything you said. I'm here today to give you the pure, biased gallery side. There's a lot of benefits to these museum shows. I'm not denying that at all. I think there's too many of them. That's where it gets difficult. And so when the artists are pulled in 20 different directions, as Mary Ross mentioned, it can start to lower the level of art quality that they're able to put out. And so if there was one museum show a year, I would be on it 100%. I would back it 1,000,000%. And I back these shows anyways. I come to all of them. I help sell paintings at these shows. I've consulted for the Autry Masters exhibition because I think it's important that they exist. So there's a lot of benefits to these shows, absolutely.
We have Michael Dudash in the back there.
Boy, we could talk about this. Well, it's an ongoing conversation, right? So I've been 45 years an artist, 25 years as an illustrator out of New York. Now the last, 20-some years, I'm in this business. And it's just really fascinating to me to see the parallels in having a wide range of experiences from all aspects of the art world. One of the things that Beau is doing, unlike a lot of galleries, he's acting almost more like an agent. A lot of galleries don't do most. I would venture to say almost the majority don't do that. I know Buddy very well, as I live up in Coeur d'Alene. So I appreciate you, Beau, and everything you said. It's very valid. All your points are very valid. And but you're really acting more like when I used to have agents, as an illustrator. So you take a different attitude toward your artists, and it's much appreciated by the artists. But from the artist standpoint, this is a minefield. It's just, I can tell you, for doing this for years, try to navigate all these waters just like collectors and museum directors. There's really no simple way to ever figure it out. We always have to make a living. We don't know one month to the next what's going to happen. When I got into the fine art, the Western art, I was doing almost all my sales through galleries, the 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Eventually, I got invited to all the big shows, and within a few years, all of a sudden, 60% of my sales are now going through the museum shows. And so I felt horrible about that because now what am I? I got these couple of great galleries. I can't send them enough work, but the museum shows elevated my profile in the industry, in ways that the galleries almost couldn't afford to do it. So we've got so many advertising dollars and I can just tell you as a person, you'd wake up every day, now what do I do? Where do I go? Do I accept this offer? Do I not? Do I send my best work to Breed West, or do I hold it off for it's really, really difficult. And all I can say to all of us, wherever you're at in this business, where our obligation for all of us is to operate ethically and morally at every step of the way. Do the right thing. You'll never figure this out with nuts and bolts and numbers. You just can't do it. It's a changing landscape. But from the collector to the gallery owner to the museum people and the artists, I have to wake up every day and make basically an ethical, moral decision what am I going to do, that's proper and right? And that's how I have to live my life as an artist. And I think that I wish we could all, as a big family, we're all like a big family in here, right? And families always have problems. We always have to try to figure it out. That's the way I look at it. Sort of a three-legged stool of artists, the collectors and the galleries and the museums. And you have an obligation, I really believe, to live your life and your business and your artwork in a way that is going to be open with communication and do the right thing wherever you possibly can. I'll give you one minor example that I've had to deal with. So a gallery might sell a painting of mine. 3 years later, a collector shows up in my studio, which is rare, and they want to buy a painting out of my studio. So I could easily say, well, I got this on the wall, and I've had these offers. I want to buy that painting. So I had that moment say, well, do I sell it directly to that collector and bypass the gallery that originally connected me with that collector? And a lot of artists will do that because you got to pay the mortgage, your kids in the hospital or whatever it is. But I won't do it. This happened to me, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but that's one example to say no. I'll sell you the painting, but I'm going to call the gallery and I'm going to send them 40% commission because they were the ones that put the advertising dollar to connect us together originally, So that's just one tiny example, and all you artists know what I'm talking about, right? I see a lot of heads nodding. There's all these sorts of things we have to go through, But I think the main thing is I love these forums because everybody's being honest and trying to figure it out and talking as best you can, and working together. So appreciate all of you.
I think honestly, I think you're reiterating what I'm saying. I'm giving you a perspective from the gallery side of things. These museum shows are great. There's no denying it. What I'm trying to show you is that we can't compete with it. Like you said, these museum shows put artists in a museum, which inherently makes it feel more important because you think that a museum is going to have a more discerning eye and that they have a better expertise on what paintings should be highlighted. I'm here to tell you that's not true, right? The galleries do. The good galleries. A good gallery,
I agree with you on that. Yeah, I do agree with that.
So, where the conflict comes is that the dealers or the art galleries are not included in this ecosystem. And when you pull one of those big things out, it creates chaos. And if you pull the museums out of that, there's going to be less credibility around this market. And so I'm not saying the museums are bad. The museums are amazing. You go to these different cities throughout the West, these organizations that are a lot of work, and I know Michael's killing it, doing everything he can to make this a successful museum and a successful show. So I'm not taking anything away from that. I think these museums are very, very important to this genre. What I'm trying to bring to the light is that if the galleries are ignored in these situations and so much of the art is taken out from the galleries, then gallery owners are going to start doing other things. And that's going to hurt the whole new generation coming up for the day-to-day instead of these once-a-year shows, the day-to-day work that goes into this. And we're not supported in a way, and we're doing everything we can to support the artists, and then that art comes to the museum shows. There's a whole element of this ecosystem that gets thrown out of whack. And so I'm looking very selfishly at myself. Is it worth it for me to continue to, it feels like I'm trying to carry the genre back to the next generation. Is it worth it for someone like me to put all my energy, all my life into this when, it doesn't necessarily feel like the respect or the importance is given to us. And it's placed on a lot of it onto these big museum shows. And I get it. They're fun. These are fun shows. It's fun to be in a museum. It's fun to be around everyone. It's fun to do the draw box. It's fun to see your name get pulled up on that thing and jump on it. I can't say anything bad about the format or the work that the museums do. They're amazing.
Michael, I'm going to take a minute maybe for the last word here.
Yeah.
A couple of things I'd like to point out because I've had this conversation a lot. Thank you, Mary, for Robert. I put together the panels, and so I asked Beau to come and participate in this event. We have to have these conversations. We have to be open and honest about it. Michael's comments, I think, fit right in that. But a couple of things from the museum perspective in this. Number one is the Night of Artists existed before the Maxwell Alexander Gallery. So in a way, the Maxwell Alexander Gallery is cutting into the museum's business. Most of these galleries draft off the museum shows, whether they want to admit it or not. We're delivering 600 prospective art buyers this weekend. We're only going to do one sale show a year to benefit the museum. The rest of the time, I'm encouraging, my staff is encouraging those collectors to go to the Maxwell Alexander. Robert Oliver went to the Maxwell Alexander Gallery after being at the Briscoe show, and many, many other collectors have done that. One of our board members just bought a painting from Beau from his show. So it's not just once a year that we're buying paintings that will ultimately end up in the collection. The same is true for Prix de West, the same is true for the Russell, the same is true for the Jackson Hole Art Auction. A lot of these shows have been around 20, 22 years for us, 30, 40, 50 years, long before any of these galleries started. The galleries started because of the museum shows. They're not cutting into the business. What we need to do is have a better relationship between the galleries and the museum shows. Because we're promoting and we're bringing in a new generation of collectors every day who come and visit our museum and visit the other museums. We want all of the collectors here to continue to buy art, continue to visit. They get to know the artists here. They go visit the artists at the studio. They go to the gallery. It's all part of the one relationship. So what I would encourage is the galleries to be more involved with the museums rather than seeing them as the enemy, seeing them as the pipeline. Because that's what we really are. And that's what I see we're doing, and to promote and build a Western art community that will thrive and really benefit all of us over the long term. So it doesn't have to be adversarial. It should be cooperative, and we can do a better job of doing that piece of it. Appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Amen.
I'd like to thank our panelists just on my behalf. Thank you so much, Beau, Mary Ross, Robert. Thank you. It's been a really spirited discussion. I think we're all going to continue the discussion throughout the rest of the day. I certainly hope, I think Michael and Beau would encourage us. Let's keep having this
Very well said. You were very succinct. Great.
Well, I don't know.
It's
So you
not
are.
an adversarial relationship. It's really not. I just came here today to give you a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so, I appreciate that very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael, thanks for being the referee up there. Hey, he used to wear a striped shirt.
This is our artist awards lunch. It's happening on the Hidalgo level. If you're attending that, it's on the ballroom level in the Hidalgo room. So head up there. It's starting at 11:30. The museum is open today.
And they need to come with They need to come with catching mask.